Hey there, and welcome, kids. It is time once again for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. Coming at you for the week of February 13th through the 19th. Happy February, everybody. It is the quietest sort of month in the first half of the year. I know it probably doesn't feel that way, but it is. So it's actually a quiet-ish week in a quiet-ish month. So there'll be a little less to say this week. So I'm excited to bring to you a few questions. I'm loving adding this thing to the podcast because I think people are responding to it. I know that I'm now at the point where I'm getting emails with questions, and now I'm getting emails in response.
Oh, wow.
To the question answer. Yeah.
Yes.
We've had like 2 or 3 emails just in this last week, like, oh my God, thank you for talking about interceptions. I don't understand them, and now I do, or things like that. So yay, I love the questions, and so I got a couple of questions for you guys today. Judith writes, since you are now addressing questions on the podcast, there we are. I wonder if you might talk about the gates of Avatar.
Whoa.
I have been told that I have this phenomena, woe is right, in my solar return chart this year, but I have not found much about it in my online research. Well, Zoe, you said whoa, right?
I've never, these listeners, I'm super impressed. I've never heard
No shit,
all
honey,
of these
because
terms.
listen, I have been an astrologer for 25, 30 years, and I've never heard of the gates of Avatar.
And so where is this coming from? I'm so curious. Like, how does
this
Judith
I couldn't
know?
tell you. It's, some... Well, let me say that that what she's talking about is something that I do know all about, which I'm going to talk about, which is called the world axis points. So I know the gates of Avatar as one version of something that we call in astrology world axis points. And the gates of Avatar is apparently some sort of woo-woo moniker associated with the world axis points that are known as the 15 degrees of the fixed signs. So before we talk about, now I cannot speak into the gates of Avatar, where Avatar is, or why they have gates, or how these are gates to Avatar. I cannot speak to that. But I can tell you what the world axis points are, and you can make of them what you will. So the first demarcation that we call world axis points is going to be very easy for everybody to understand. What they are is 4 points in the ecliptic, in the whole wheel of 360 degrees. There are 4 points that are considered directly connected to the world at large, meaning a collective kind of moment where everybody on the planet and the planet itself is experiencing a moment in consciousness in the same way at the same time. They are 0 degrees of Aries, 0 degrees of Cancer, 0 Libra, and 0 Capricorn. You might recognize those signs as the signs where the seasons begin.
Oh.
And so 0 degrees of Aries is the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere.
Okay.
0 degrees of Cancer is the summer solstice up north. The other equinox is 0 degrees of Libra, and the winter solstice in the north is 0 degrees of Capricorn. So world axis points in regard to the 0 degrees of what's called the cardinal signs, because cardinal is a quality in astrology that means to start up or to initiate. So the cardinal signs initiate a season. So if you have a point in your chart that is 0 degrees of Aries, 0 Cancer, 0 Libra, or 0 Capricorn, you have a world axis point in your chart. And therefore, the planet or point that's at that 0 degree cardinal sign point means you have a consciousness within your chart that connects you to the world at large. Now, what does that mean, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, everything and nothing. The astrologer would look at a chart and see a world axis point and planet and make the determination that that person, through the consciousness of whatever planet is at one of those points, is somehow expressing that consciousness through the world at large in a bigger way. Sometimes this will show up as visibility in the world or being known a little bit. by the world at large, but not exclusively. For example, I'll never forget this example of this when I read a woman sometime after the OJ trials who had 0 degrees Cancer for her Jupiter placement. And how that, she wasn't famous in the world, but the woman could not pull herself off TV when some big world event was rising up. And it's like she couldn't stop watching the OJ trial. It like ruined her for a few weeks and months, right? She was calling in sick some days to stay home and watch the trial. She was captivated in a Jupiterian, expansive way by a world event.
Mm-hmm.
I have read people who have 0 degrees of these 4 cardinal signs as their angles, and they are not necessarily wildly different human beings than others. So this is a dicey kind of thing to grab onto and try to get excited about, because the meaning is the planet has some connection to the world at large, and how you would then interpret that for the actual person it's not like a literal, if you have one of these points, you're going to be famous. It's not that at all. But that's what it means. It means that the planet has some connection to the world at large in a way that is worthy of inspiring a conversation between astrologer and client, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, where we get to the gates of Avatar is just a second demarcation of the same principle, a point in the ecliptic that somehow touches the collective as a whole more directly. And it happens to be 15 degrees of the fixed signs.
Mm-hmm.
Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Well, 15 degrees of the fixed signs is just the exact halfway point between 2 of the 0-degree seasonal moments. So the 15-degree fixed sign is the exact midpoint of spring, or the exact midpoint of summer, the exact midpoint of fall. So you get the idea that the solar system kind of goes ding at the start of every season. And then it goes ding at the midpoint. It's kind of like a timing bell.
Yeah.
And so this woman, Judith, has gates of Avatar, or fixed 15-degree sign world axis points in her chart for the year, her solar return chart, not her birth chart, but the chart that marks the year of her birth life now, this, 2023 birthday experience. So something about her solar return chart, or the energy that she's moving through this year, will likely have her more connected to the outside world than not. And this could be as simple, back to my woman with, 0-degree Cancer, Jupiter. Maybe this is the year that Judith gets more connected to paying attention to politics in the United States than she typically does, because it's getting juicy, and so she's captivated. I am making that up. This is not a prediction on Judith. But you see, I don't know what it means that she has a fixed access point in her solar return chart, except to say that whatever planet is at that point, that planet's expression might push her outside of her skin and her home to have an experience of whatever that planet is expressing. Part of her journey, Judith, your journey through and with the collective during this birthday year, might have you more captivated or interested or impacted by collective events during this year. Here's another question from Ryan, who writes, I have been told I'm on the cusp, but I once heard you say that's not a thing. Can you explain? So let me tell the story. I've told this story a million times. It's worthy of telling again. In 1930-something or other, Prince Margaret was born in England. Some astrologer wrote a prediction in the tabloids that said her childhood would be marked by some great sort of tumultuous catastrophe that would change her entire life. Then the king abdicates, 10 years later, and she's suddenly thrust into, the royal lineage family. Her sister is made Prince, Elizabeth, who eventually becomes queen. And the newspapers go crazy because it's the British tabloid press.
Oh, yeah,
they
they're
get
wild.
excited about the idea And so some astrologer and some editor in 1930-something had to sit down and say, yeah, you know what? Everybody has a sun sign that changes with the month, and it's absolute, meaning everybody born on this day will have the same sun sign. So we can actually create something called a horoscope column where we write up nonsense about how a day or a week is impacting a star sign or a sun sign placement, and we can put in there the little grid that allows a person to say, well, I'm born on April 28th. Oh, that makes me a what? Taurus sun. And by 1950, every fucking newspaper in the world had a horoscope column.
Yeah.
It wasn't driven by astrology. It was driven by the tabloid press in the UK. It wasn't something real or organic from astrology because, frankly, the sun placement is the least sensitive of receiving transits on a day-to-day basis. Like if a transit is hitting your sun in a whack way, but another one is hitting your moon in a whack way, you're not going to feel the sun transit. You're going to feel the one that's hitting your moon or your Mars or your Mercury, right? So it's not an accurate way of describing how astrology operates, but what it has done is created in the zeitgeist an idea of, oh, I know what astrology is. Astrology is my sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have people talking about dating compatibility and sun sign.
Yeah.
Where in dating compatibility, which has got a fancy name in astrology, it's called synastry, and sun sign connection is barely going to tell you anything about the intimacy, the communication, the sexuality, or the safety of that relationship. Because sun sign is just not that powerful. So, cusp got invented for those people who didn't see an not equal, but a clear mark of what their birth date and what sun sign might be. So this idea of like, oh, yeah, you're on the cusp. You're close to the end, so you should read both. You vibe with the sign your sun is in and where your sun is going. That's bullshit. Not astrology.
Okay.
Made up slowly over a few decades of newspaper and the collective receiving horoscopes and making something up that would help make sense of something that is otherwise a little complex, like when does the sun change signs? It doesn't change signs in a calendar day. It changes in a minute on a calendar day. And at any rate, so this idea that if your sun is at 26 or 27 or 28 or 29 degrees of a sign, that you also vibe in a sun sign consciousness way with the next sign that's coming, that's nonsense. It's not a thing. Whatever sign your sun is in, that's your sun sign, kids.
Period.
Unless it's the 30th degree, that's the anaretic degree, and one day I'll do a question answer about what that is, but that's not even cusp. That's mastery of the sign the sun is at the final degree of. Cusp, not a thing. Ryan, wherever your sun is, that's your sun sign. So it is a relatively quiet week. There's a little bit less to talk about in the week ahead. The weekend is juicy with the sun changing signs on Saturday and the new moon on Sunday. But let's chat about two little things that happen along the way that are either lovely or interesting or both. On Wednesday, Venus and Neptune are going to conjunct at the same time that Mercury is going to square the nodes of the moon. So this is Wednesday of this week. And the reason why I'm even just bringing this up, partly is because it's a quiet week and I have the time. But this is an interesting moment in the week for relationship negotiations, moving things in, the direction of where they need to go, driven and guided by love. Neptune and Venus are both love planets. Venus is love in our hearts at a personal level. Neptune is the love of the divine. And when these guys get together every 2 years or so, we move through an expansion of like love is everywhere in our cells, in our body, and in the air around us, in the sky above and the earth below. All love all the time when Venus and Neptune conjunct. If nothing else, it's certainly a yummy hump day this week that love will be easily accessed. Both of these planets are in Pisces, which is awesome because Neptune is the ruler of Pisces and Venus is exalted in this sign. She's free to operate with all forgiveness, all compassion, and all tenderness for others. And Mercury is adding to what Venus is doing by propelling us forward through conversation, thought, and negotiation. And actually, I shouldn't even really put thought in there because what Mercury is doing on Wednesday is squaring the nodes of the moon. The nodes of the moon, one of the ways we pay attention to them is they indicate moments when the collective is moving forward in some way. And if it's a personal planet doing the touch in to the nodes, then it's through a personal experience, and in this case, through conversation, that people are going to be propelling things forward as we move through this hump day. So, like in my daily Astro Alert for Wednesday, I assure you the language will be something like we are connecting with others for a purpose. We're negotiating powerful movement, either away from the past, that's Mercury squaring the South Node, or towards the future, that's Mercury squaring the North Node. And because Venus and Neptune are making the entire passage steeped in love, if you're going through any narrative that includes stuff about personal relationship, this is a week where things may get pushed forward powerfully through negotiation and conversation, driven by love, and understanding that sometimes love wants us to deepen our connection with people and sometimes love wants us to separate. So I'm not saying it's going to be one way or the other, but some of you, I even think many of you, will be negotiating through some interesting shifts you want to create to move forward from a loving place, but also in a manner that might be a powerful lesson. That's why I mentioned things may not necessarily go forward into a loving way if this is in your narrative, because Sun and Saturn are conjuncting on Thursday. So while our hearts are wide open on Wednesday and we're compelled to speak into something that we want to make different, we're also then amplifying into what will peak on Thursday, which is a kind of brakes on, slow down, do the right thing, don't make any mistakes, don't move too impulsively. That's what happens when Sun and Saturn conjunct. Saturn says, keep the pace, do the right thing, learn the lesson, and operate from wisdom. So when the Sun and Saturn conjunct once a year, we get a real beautiful light of consciousness shining down on, well, what is the right thing? What is the lesson learned? What is the way I can tap into my past wisdom to make a better choice? And since Mercury on Wednesday is propelling us forward, we do want to make sure we're doing the right thing, operating from wisdom and keeping all of our lessons in tow as we make our next choice. So that does make Wednesday and Thursday kind of juicy and important for all negotiations. And I'll add to this, this does not only apply to romance.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be captivated to talk about romance when Venus is so heavily activated, and certainly many people will be experiencing romantic love changes this week. But the heart is also the emotional body. So Venus and Neptune coming together could just be opening up your emotional body to such a yummy place where you're free to experience all of your emotions without hindrance, and therefore negotiate your future from a place that isn't emotionally triggered, doing the right thing from Sun and Saturn because you're ready to sort of take on the world in a bigger way, and then you benefit from the same geometry when the story your life is telling isn't about romance at all. We all benefit from negotiation conversations driven by love but tempered by wisdom this week. So this weekend, it's all Pisces all the time. On Saturday, the 18th of February, the sun moves out of Aquarius and into the Pisces mansion. And the very next day, on Sunday, February 19th, we have the new moon in Pisces. So we move out of the mansion ruled by Uranus, where waking up to higher levels of awareness and breaking out of constraints and moving in the direction of innovation and newness. And we drop into the mansion of love, forgiveness, compassion, and the deep inner place from which all of our manifestations in form come from. One of the most important things about moving into the Pisces mansion is to acknowledge that the Aries mansion comes next. And when we cross over from the last degree of Pisces to the first degree of Aries, we are at a world axis point. We will be at the beginning of a season, and the equinox, it marks days and nights of equal length. And that little point between end of Pisces, beginning of Aries, is called the birth canal of the zodiac. So if we're going to birth something as we burst into the astrological new year in 4 weeks, essentially, from this weekend's ingress, then we can think of this weekend as beginning a 4-week marination in the inner mental and emotional equivalent of the world you want to create for yourself. It's a great time to be in consideration of where is forgiveness needed in your life. Where might compassion and an attendance to the needs of others be a better driving force to focus on over the next couple of weeks? And of course, look to the Pisces house in your chart, because that's where your life vision consciousness will be lit up for the next 4 weeks. And understand that dreams will rise up in importance. Our connection to spirit will be easier. This is the sign ruled by Neptune, the great spirit. So Neptune's
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah. Neptune has been there since 2011. So every time the sun moves into Pisces since 2011, one of the things that we're going to enjoy towards the end of the Pisces mansion is a conjunction between the sun and Neptune. You can think of that as your yearly spiritual upgrade. So everything about the next 4 weeks from this weekend is about connecting to your Neptunian consciousness, bolstering your spiritual connection so that you can tap into the flow that Pisces sort of gives us. And any place in your heart that needs some forgiveness, it's more readily available in the Pisces mansion. And that last thing I said just a moment ago, I used a buzzword that I really actually love. It's one of the buzzwords that I kind of love, which is being in the flow, tapping into a flow state. It's a sort of modern buzzy word. Lots of coaches are using this to describe what it's like to behave in certain ways. And for me, that means a spiritual practice, meditation, prayer, etc. Doing behaviors that tap you in to an ability to make decisions and be productive in a manner that's more aligned with what the body wants and is ready to do, freer of the mind's interference with too many thoughts and opinions about what you're doing or not doing. And once we move into the Pisces mansion, flow state is more readily available. And so it's a great month to practice the tools you pick up to stay in flow and notice if indeed you can tap into that energy more readily and more easily. I think it'll be the case. Try that.
I am so ready for that.
Well, let's say that then. Let's switch gears here to the new moon in Pisces.
Okay, let's
Make
talk
that one
about
of
it.
your intentions. In fact, that would be a stunning way of describing what's the best way. Like sometimes what I like to do, I feel like I haven't done this in a while or had cause to, but sometimes it's really easy, not easy. It's valuable to distill a moment into something very simplistic for people to understand. Like if I say this, in the Pisces new moon this Sunday, if you do nothing else, set the intention that I will find the flow with great ease in this lunar cycle. I'm sure there's a better way to articulate it than that, but you understand what I'm saying, Zoe, is that that's a perfect, fulsome, and complete way to use the Pisces new moon, set an intention, and be one and done. Sometimes I think we get too complicated with, what intentions to set. And sometimes it's just enough to be like, I intend to live in flow state with grace and ease and power. And so it is.
Yeah.
What I love about a Pisces new moon right after Venus in Pisces and Neptune gathered is that it really is all a new moon that's about love at the personal level and love at the transpersonal level. Because as the moon is new, she, meaning Venus, is at the last degree of Pisces. So I hinted back in the question and answer section that the 30th degree is a mastery degree. That means it's called the anaretic degree. I think it's A-N-A-R-E-T-I-C, anaretic. It's a word that means mastery. Well, I don't know that anaretic means mastery, but what it implies is mastery of the planet in the sign that it's in. And Venus is, of course, all about love. Pisces all about connection, oneness, unity, forgiveness, compassion. And Venus is exaltation sign. And she is at 29 degrees and 57 minutes of Pisces when the new moon happens. And then that means she bursts into Aries about 2 hours later. That's good for us, because the intention-setting juice is in between Saturday, when the sun enters Pisces, and like 11:09 p.m. on Sunday, this is Pacific time, is the new moon. That makes all day Sunday what's called the dark of the moon, where the moon is approaching the sun, but not quite there yet. That's the juiciest, richest time to be setting intentions in any new moon. And so if those intentions include love in your heart at the personal level in any way, like love, I want one, love, I have one, I want it deeper, any of the love intentions, this is an intention to set love with a capital L and a small l, and understand that when Venus bursts into Aries, though she's not terribly comfortable there, with regard to a crafty little lunar cycle, she's right where she needs us to have her when it's time to set intentions, and then we just let her fire off into Aries to bring it, to fire it up, to start up love for us at a deeper level, because she's going to take her imprinting of the intentions we offer, as long as it's done, say, before midnight Pacific on Sunday, and then burst in for the next 3.5 weeks in a different sensation with Venus and Aries, which I will be talking about at the top of next week's podcast. But back to Sunday and intention setting. Deepen your desire for love at every level and understand this is the new moon to set those lofty intentions of love in every form. And know that because the new moon is making good contact with the nodes of the moon, intentions we set for love in our lives now will point us in new directions, so that if there is a love out there on its way to you, it's more likely to find you and you to find it. But it starts now with the declaration of all that you desire. Have at it.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a call-in dreamer from Austin, Texas. Hey Violet, what you dreaming?
Hi, Zoe. Okay, so one of the dreams that I was having was a couple of months ago, about last year. I was sleeping in my parents' backyard on a soft mattress, and the mattress was in a pool, but my parents don't have a pool, so that was super weird. In my dream, I had another dream, like it was Inception, that a herd of horses, but they look like they were ghosts or spirits, like they were see-through, they're transparent, were running over my body as I was sleeping in the pool. And while I was sleeping, I could feel them, like each of their, footprints on my body. It wasn't painful or scary. It was just kind of like a massage, honestly. And then a bull came out of nowhere in the same kind of form, like transparent, and stopped like all the horses. And all the horses kind of blew up in like a mist and like fell over my body. And the bull's just like kind of breathing on me like it's, in a strong stance. And so I wake up in my dream and I look around. I'm like, what the heck just happened? And my mom is on the patio on the porch, like sitting crisscross applesauce. And I was like, what the heck was that? And she's like, I don't know. You need to pay attention to the symbols. And I was like, okay. And then she pointed up at the sky and I saw a bird fly by and I was like, what does that mean? She's like, I don't know. And then I woke up for real. It was very interesting, very elusive, very confusing dream.
Wow. Okay. Let's. Where do I want to start with questions? Well, I mean, you're calling up a podcast about astrology and dreams, so I'm assuming that you vibe with symbolism and meaning. Yeah.
Yes,
And
definitely.
so, did that come out of your family of origin environment, or was that something that developed independent of, say, your mother's life perspectives?
I would say it's my stepmother, but her and I have gotten more psychic. Like we've both have our own independent beliefs, but over the past couple of years, we've become more like in tune with each other. And like it's just freaky stuff. I do tarot readings for her sometimes, and it's just like spot on. It's like it's very
got it. So it's an
cool.
affirmative relationship in your
Yeah.
waking life that supports your curiosities and your explorations and your own intuitive development. Okay. And how old are you?
My birthday was yesterday, so 26.
Ah, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Well, happy birthday. Oh, that's lovely. I love that. Okay, 26. All right, got it. Pools are receptacles for water. Water in dreams is about our emotional content. Water is like the unconscious, the oceans, the unconscious mind, land is conscious, but pools are man-made. They're like, here's how much water we can handle and have it be restorative and restful, right? So it's like a moderate amount of personal, emotional stuff. So to be, you didn't have a pool, so this you in a pool in your parents' backyard is not a literal image. Then it has to be a figurative image. And we know that your stepmother wants you to understand the symbolism. So the symbolism for me of you resting in your parents' backyard in the pool that isn't from real life is to say, in the consciousness of who I am based on my parents and how I was raised, behind the scenes, backyard, I was supported enough in my emotional development that I could actually rest in a level of emotional content right? So this is not a dream about childhood trauma. This is a dream that starts about childhood emotional support. Even the mattress you're sleeping on being soft is as if to say, this part of my psyche, that behind the scenes of my family of origin psyche, backyard, I actually can tap into that I was emotionally supported, and there's a consciousness of rest and restoration as symbolized by you resting back on that soft mattress, right? So we're starting with an idea that we're not looking at difficulties from childhood, but actual supportive nature from childhood, which I understand now from our conversation we had about your waking life and your actual stepmom and this part of the dream, right? The opening of a dream always tells us what the theme is going to be. And this is a theme of moderate, comfortable, restful, restorative relationship to family of origin emotional content. But true to your desire to explore and expand your psyche and your intuitive and psychic consciousness and your development as a human being, you're going to deeper places. Dreams within a dream are fairly sophisticated. I mean, they happen, but for a person to be aware of them, to remember them, and to be able to follow them as distinct represents a kind of sophisticated, unconscious comfort. So in this dream within a dream, you're in some consideration of power. Horses are about power. We even measure power of moving vehicles by deciding how many horses the vehicle would sort of represent. So a herd of horses is about power. So there's something interesting about this image. I would love to sort of share my thoughts and then just ask you what you think of what I'm saying. If horses are power and these horses are trampling you, on the one hand, the idea is a dangerous image of like, I'm being trampled by my own power. But yet the other side of how this image is being shown to you is more spiritual in nature, right? These are sort of mystical horse consciousness. And their running over you isn't dangerous. It's actually more restoration, more comfort, more. Just like I described the first part of the dream, you described it as feeling a little bit like a massage. So what do you think of that? Like, is this image with the horses destructive or supportive, both or neither? What are your thoughts as I present how I'm looking at these symbols?
Yeah. Well, my original thought was the horses. I always relate it to the Sagittarius sign.
Okay, who's
And
half horse?
I'm a Sagittarius moon.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm very emotionally impulsive or reactive. And it's very hard for me to sit with my feelings. I feel like during that time, I had more satisfaction with just like releasing them and, kind of saying whatever I wanted. And I was learning how to control that, I guess.
Well, first of all, I love that you're bringing in the image of the avatar of Sagittarius, who was in fact half a horse and half a man. He was a centaur. And therefore is about spiritual seeking, spiritual guidance. I like the fact that you have a Sagittarius moon and these horses in your dream were much more moon-like than sun-like.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't
definitely.
of like 3D form. They were gossamer. They were transparent. So I think you now, using what you just described as your original association with the horses, your sort of surrender and lying back, going to a deeper place below the dream within a dream, allowing a sense of, this power, this movement is always happening. I don't have to grab any impulse with it. I can just lie back and receive that there's power always. I get to then choose. And so you move from that idea to this, the real medicine of the dream is the bull.
That's the part I can't figure out.
Well, are you a Taurus sun? Taurus sun, Sag moon? I'm kidding. I would plot if you were a Taurus sun or a Taurus rising. Well, what are bulls? Bulls are the promise of enormous power. Like, we respect the bull's power without having to instigate it into action, right? You just look and you see the bull and you're like, okay, we don't fuck with this. This is some real, real power. Now, this is your dream, Violet, which means the bull is your medicine. So was going to say, as you grow and develop, I'm going to make an assertion here that because the horses were present naturally when they came up in this part of the dream, but then are sort of dissipated by the bull, that tells me you're done with horse medicine and are advancing to bull medicine. The bull comes and says, you don't need that consciousness anymore. You need something more grounded, more powerful, more capable of moving the obstacles and, anything bullish, because it's breathing its breath onto you. It's basically saying, I'm here, I'll breathe with you, and now you have this medicine as, in your toolbox. Whatever bull medicine means to you. And I can't give you this is what you should think of as bull, because I've already sort of had. Bull is nascent potential for enormous power that doesn't need to flex to reflect and express its sense of power. The still, immovable sense of, I got power just because I'm here and I'm breathing. And then we come up out of that visit to the below. We're still in the dream state because you went into a dream within a dream, and you get this message of pay attention to the symbols. And the part of you that says to do so doesn't have access to the meaning. Your mother, remember, it's not your mother, because it's not her dream. It's your dream. So it's an aspect of you that lives in you as this is the consciousness that has supported my spiritual investigation, just like your stepmother has in waking life, right? But it's not her because it's not her dream. And this part of you knows to pay attention, but isn't going to then tell you what it means. And this is what it is to live a life of exploration. We do know when something is important. We don't really always know what it means. And that's a beautiful question built into life. Yeah. So I'm going to send you off from here, Violet, and I'm not going to say, here's what the bull means, because I don't know what the bull means. I know it means strength. I know it means newness because it's arising in this dream as if to introduce itself to you. And you have to figure out what the symbolism means for yourself in the framework of, I think this dream means you're expanding your gifts.
Yeah. It's funny because my stepmom, because we always talk about, symbolism and yada, yada, yada. And I'll get too far in depth in the conversation. And she's like, why do you have to know? She's like, just appreciate the elegance of the universe and just, let go and have faith that you'll figure it out eventually. And that's the hardest thing for me.
Well, and honey,
is to not.
The moon reflects our unconscious and therefore also our longings, right? And the Sagittarius moon consciousness longs to know why. And seeks and seeks and seeks and seeks. And do you know why the seeker keeps seeking? Because there's no answer why. Right? Your mother's right.
Oh man. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So go play with bull a little. Look at images of bull. See what it speaks to, look up, bull meaning, there's lots of different, ways online or books to find animal symbolism, and you'll find different stories. I don't know if I did bull in my dream dictionary, but if I did, I promise you it is about this sense of nascent power that doesn't need, to flex itself to be, visible. And I think you're in a juicy expansion of your intuitive gifts, and do your best to honor your mother's guidance of, you don't have to always know why, but you're never going to stop that quest. That's built into you.
Yeah, I always wonder about everything. Yeah, Taurus is my midheaven, so I feel like I get very emotional at my job. I get too emotionally involved, and I feel like I lack the assertiveness. But now that talking to you, I'm like, maybe the bull means I need to be more assertive and more strong, or step into my power of these are my boundaries, and not getting worked up all the time about my job.
Right. Well, listen, I love everything that just came out of your mouth in a general way of the sort of language of self-awareness. And because you have shared with us that Taurus the bull rules your midheaven, I'll remind the listening audience and you that the midheaven isn't just about your job. It's actually about what you offer into the world, right? The bottom of the chart is how you sort of come to home and privacy. And then the midheaven is what you bring or push into the world, which includes, for many people, their jobs. So if we take away the job piece as literal and we just look at the midheaven as like what you're supposed to be putting out into the world more powerfully, I think the bull says you're ready. And when I say ready, I mean to do all of those personal marshaling of resources and boundaries and self, worth that you just described, but also a general sense of, I have things to put out into the world. I want to contribute. I want to be of service to people. I want to use my intuition, which you have obviously in spades. And that becomes your midheaven as well as your job.
Man, that makes so much more sense
Yay!
now. Like everything is clicking
I
and
love
like
it.
falling
Yay!
in place in my brain. So
That's what
thank
we
you.
love to hear. Thank you, Violet. Thanks for sharing your dream.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.